In perfection, they say there's nothing new under the sun, but under the ground.
Mr. Mash, it's cold outside right now.
It is, in fact, cold outside. In fact, I would say it's colder than Frosty's balls outside.
We are currently in winter.
Can I just say, while we're talking about winter, that I really hate that name? It starts with win, and nobody wins during winter.
Nobody wins. When it's cold outside, I like to watch films set in warm climates. It makes me feel like summer is going to be here soon, we swear. And what's a long-running, somewhat popular film franchise set in a primarily warm part of the world?
That'd be Tremors.
So you really get shaken up about it.
That movie is definitely all perfection.
In the early 2000s, when you and I were in school together, it seemed like the Sci-Fi Channel on the USA Network would show the then 3 Tremors movies constantly. Every weekend they would show them.
It was only 2 until we were in high school.
The third one came out, I think, our freshman year of high school.
Introduced the Ass Blaster, which is a cool thing. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. It's through those repeated television airings that I became a big fan of the series. That's how it goes for most people. My understanding, the first Tremors movie, it made money, but it wasn't an enormous success. And it was really on video and on TV where it found its audience. I remember rewatching those 3 films constantly on Sci-Fi.
Definitely, yeah.
Let's get started. Let's head back to those heady days of 1990.
Perfection. A scorched outpost in the middle of nowhere. Maybe that's why Val and Earl decided to leave town. They just picked the wrong day to do it.
That's how they get you. They're under the ground.
The early 90s was the last hurrah for traditional monster movies. Tremors came out in 1990, and just a few years later, CGI would become the predominant way to doing these things. This movie is one of the last hurrahs for traditional creature effects.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. The last one I saw to use practical effects, even for part of their creature design, was The Faculty.
And even then, there was a lot of really not that good CGI in that movie. What's Tremors about, man? This movie with this very mysterious title, Tremors, what does that mean? That could mean anything. Yeah.
For starters, the setting is simply perfection.
Perfection Valley, Nevada, or just perfection in most of the films.
This town is experiencing some slight seismic activity.
It's a small town, middle of the Nevada desert, not very many people
There's
live
like
there.
a store, 5 houses, and that makes up this town.
And then some people start dying.
First death they find is the guy up in the
telephone tower.
Yeah.
And he starved to death. Characters are Valentine, or just Val, and his heterosexual life partner, Earl. And they're planning to leave perfection, but there's nothing to do here. Who's responsible for the deaths in the town?
Giant fucking worms.
Giant subterranean worms that have Korean-style tongues.
That look like horned snakes.
Yeah, and they sense by sound. They sense by vibrations in the ground. The only way to get away from them is to be on top of buildings or on rock. They can't go for really hard rock. The denizens of perfection have to band together to survive. There's a lot of things I like about this film, but I think the best attribute of Tremors is its cast. It has a really great ensemble cast. A super likable cast of characters.
Definitely. I really like the seismologist.
Oh yeah, Rhonda.
Who looks like a Kathleen Turner knockoff.
Young Kathleen Turner. She's the love interest for our main character. I guess he's our main character. It really is an ensemble film. There's really no definitive lead, but I suppose the lead is Kevin Bacon as Valentine.
You know who I think the lead is?
Who?
Even though he's not really a lead in this movie? Bert Gummer. He's the one that's all through all 4 of them.
Yeah, he would become the main character of the franchise in time.
And he's my favorite character.
Oh, absolutely. Bert is the best. At the time, Michael Gross was known for Family Ties, for playing the hippie dad on Family Ties. And in this, he plays the exact opposite of that. He's this hyper-conservative, something of conspiracy theorist. He's a survivalist type, has a large collection of guns, and he lives in an underground bunker. Who plays his wife in this?
Reba McEntire.
And I think this was her first movie.
And she did a knockout job.
She has such great chemistry with Bert, and there's that wonderful moment where he's about to have a fit, and she says to him, just let it go, honey.
They call the gun by the wrong name.
This is her first movie, and it's hard to believe because she's so good in it. She has such a natural screen presence.
She's actually a really good actress.
She is, and she has great chemistry with Michael Gross. But the people who are supposed to be the main characters are Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward. They're good, don't get me wrong. I like both of them. Kevin Bacon has this roguish cowboy charm, and by all accounts, he was not happy to be in this movie. He said, oh my god, what's my career coming to? I'm in a movie about giant worms. But Fred Ward is great. The character, Earl, wants to be a cowboy. He's always chastising himself for his profanity. Say shit or something, and he'll go, pardon my language.
He'll be like, darn, and he'll go, pardon my French.
Yeah, Victor Wong as Mr. Chang, of Big Trouble in Little China and Prince of Darkness, so many great films. He's the one who comes up with the name of Graboid. Melvin and Mindy, those are the kids. Mindy's always on her pogo stick.
Yes.
And Melvin's a little shithead.
In fact, I believe he gets called a little shithead.
I believe so,
numerous times in the movie.
Miguel is the Mexican dude, there's the mom, and then there's Rhonda, the love interest. All the characters in this film are likable. The secret weapon of Tremors, one of the reasons why it's become such a cult favorite. Now, would you describe Tremors as a horror movie?
Not really.
Now, I would not call it a horror movie, I would call it a monster movie. I think it's a distinct thing.
Yeah.
There are some horror sequences with cars being buried and stuff.
Still, it's more like a buddy cop movie with giant worms.
A little bit, yeah. Those central creatures are really interesting. They really build up to the reveal. At first, we only see the dead bodies. We see the guy on the tower, we see the head underneath the cowboy hat. That's a good one. And at first, we see the tongues. And I was telling you, if you watch the trailer, if you look at the posters, all you see were those weird tongues. They were trying to trick people into thinking that was the monster. When the giant worm shows up, it's a surprise. That never worked today on the internet.
In the 90s, that's probably why it wasn't so successful. They're not really showing off the goods. I'll be honest, if all I saw in a trailer was those tongue things, I'd be like, I'm not seeing that fucking movie. That looks stupid.
When we first see the Graboid, it really is a great reveal. The tongues are great. They have these little horns on their heads, which are feelers. The trisected mouth on the Graboid is one of my favorite things about it.
Yeah.
Before we go on, how do you feel about that name Graboid? In this first movie, it's a joke. There's no real name for the worms in this movie. But in the sequel, they ran with a Graboid thing.
Because Victor died. The full name.
I think Graboid's a little silly, but what else are we going to call him? The hunting by sound aspect is a really clever thing. It forces our characters to be more careful how they step. I always remember the scene where Val is on the ground and the tongue is coming from the ground and he's moving his foot up and down as the tongue is whipping back and forth, which is both funny and the movie does generate some suspense from the characters not being able to move around or make a lot of noise. I love the scene where the Graboid comes up through the convenience shop because of the freezer.
Yeah.
Pulls Mr. Chang down. That's all good stuff. Now, speaking of Bert, what about the scene in the basement?
Oh my god, that scene is awesome. That is like one of my top 10 scenes in a movie.
Oh, it's great. Giant fucking worm comes through the wall. Bert has this wall covered with guns.
Hit the wrong damn basement, didn't ya?
Picking every gun off the wall and trying all of them.
Try the elephant gun!
Yeah, he has this giant elephant gun in a glass case, breaks it open, and they shoot it in the mouth and finally kill the thing that way. Such a great sequence. Oh, something else that's awesome. Bert has these homemade...
pipe bombs.
Pipe bombs. Put them on a rope, toss them out over the desert, drag it along, the Graboid eats it and then explodes. And I love the exchange. Bert is pulling the fuse out. Earl asks him, what's that? Bert says, cannon fuse. What's that for? My cannon. It's very matter of fact. Yeah. Don't you have a cannon? Yeah.
But you use for your cannon.
The worms are smart. They have to keep outsmarting them. It makes for some really novel approaches. When I first saw the movie, I didn't really know exactly what was going to happen. It kept me guessing. Tremors, it's pleasant, funny, it's smart, it's well cast, easily rewatched.
Good popcorn movie.
I can see why this would be such a video favorite. I can imagine going to the store and picking this off the shelf every time. I went to rate this on IMDb after my most recent rewatch, and I saw that I'd only given it a 7. And I'm thinking, is Tremors a 9 out of 10? Fuck it, Tremors is a 9 out of 10.
Well, you know, Tremors is my grandmother's favorite movie of all time.
Really?
Yeah, she loves that movie.
They lay dormant for years, waiting for the chance to appear once again. Now, they're back. And they'll find you no matter where you try to hide. And only a team of dedicated professionals can stop them.
To go Graboid hunting.
This time, they're prepared. There's only one problem. This time, the worms have turned.
Damn worms never cut you any slack.
They made a sequel. Surprisingly, it took 6 years. The sequel did not come out until 1996. When I saw the discrepancy in the date, I thought, wow, that seems like a really long time. And I looked it up. The sequel was originally planned for theaters. And then there was budget cutbacks. They had to change the location a couple times. They went into production turnaround. So that's why it was delayed for 6 years. This film was released straight to video.
Which is a shame. This is my favorite one out of the series.
Tremors II Aftershocks is your favorite. That surprises me. I like all of these movies. Even the worst one is still pretty good.
I like the idea of the heat-seeking freak Shriekers?
The Shriekers. I think releasing this direct-to-video, that's where the first one found its audience anyway.
Yeah.
This film could have easily played in theaters without any problem.
Oh yeah, even the practical effects that they have in the film are pretty stellar.
Practical effects are good. Some of the CGI is...
Not so much.
Not so much. We'll get to that. What's the plot of Tremors 2 Aftershocks? So 6 years later,
Somebody finds out they've come back, they go and they get Earl.
a Mexican oil field is having graboid problems.
That's what it is.
They go get Earl because he's the world-renowned graboid catcher. Valentine has run off. Apparently they've had some fame. In Bert's trailer, you see magazine covers, and favorite part is the graboid arcade machine, which I wish was real.
Doesn't he have a graboid head mounted on
No,
it?
Bert has the graboid head mounted in his basement.
Which is cool. Which is
One
awesome.
of the best reveals in the movie.
I wish they came out with a prop replica of that, because you know damn well I'd own that bitch.
There's so little merchandise from these movies. SOTA Toys was going to do a box set of Bert and a graboid, but it just didn't get released. And that's one of the things I want the most.
Man, a graboid action figure? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, Earl goes to Mexico. There he meets some new characters, Grady, Kate. They get Bert to come back down. As the tagline for the movie goes, the worm turns. There's some new surprises in store with the graboids.
The Shriekers. How do they say the Shriekers come to be?
The graboid turns into a cocoon, and I think 3 Shriekers comes out of 1 graboid. How do you feel about the Shriekers? They have a completely different physiology from graboids. They're not subterranean at all. They're bipedal. They walk on land.
I like that better. It adds a different kind of element of fear, almost.
They're a cool design. They keep the graboid head. They keep the trisected mouth, which is a great idea. And they put it on a pudgy velociraptor body.
Right.
And it has the cool little heat-seeking thing that comes up, and I like that. Changes the gimmick of the series.
It does, but it doesn't change the gimmick. It goes from, they can only track you by sound,
Yeah.
there's that.
There are lots of movies about small monsters attacking people. Tremors was about things under the ground. It's fun, and it's fun when you see them blown up. Bert hacks a tank gun, and he blows up a single Shrieker with it. The bullet hits the Shrieker, and it turns into orange mist, like the Shriekers, but I think the graboids are cooler. The Shriekers don't show up until about the halfway point. The first half is about as good a sequel as anybody could have asked for. The change of scenery from flat, dusty Nevada to the green, rolling hills of Mexico was a nice touch. Earl and his new sidekick, Grady, who's very similar to Kevin Bacon's character from the first movie. You have them thinking up all these novel ways of catching graboids. The little remote-controlled
Oh my
trucks.
god, that's one of the best monster movie weapons ever.
Yeah, it really is very clever. They move across the ground, the graboid eats it, blows it up.
That's so simplistic, but so intelligent.
What the series does well. Simple, but really clever ideas. They put chains on the back of the pickup truck to attract the graboid, and there's a moment where the graboid grabs the chain and starts pulling the truck around, or the graboid eats the radio. You always hear music. Really small little scene. Earl and Grady are on a rock, sleeping for the night. They hear a coyote howling. Earl says, "You better be quiet." You hear the noise of the graboid surfacing. The coyote howling stops.
Yes, that's awesome. That's another thing that was simplistic but clever.
Bringing Fred Ward into the lead is fine. They acknowledge the absence. Kevin Bacon, Reba McEntire aren't in this movie. They acknowledge that they're not there. Fred Ward can carry the film easily. I think Earl is a lot of fun. That opening scene where he's wrestling ostriches.
Wrestling ostriches. We didn't talk about the opening scene, but isn't this the opening scene where the guy's running on top of
The barrels.
First time I ever saw this movie, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Because this was the first Tremors movie I've ever seen,
Oh,
actually.
okay. You were in for a surprise.
So I had no idea what was going on. Got me.
What in the hell is that? We mentioned Bert's reappearance. His introduction is great. He's sitting in his basement watching World War II footage, and he's crying and eating ice cream. His wife has left him, and why did she leave him? Because he never got over the collapse of the Soviet Union. I'm so glad they brought him back. They knew that he was the MVP of the series.
He carried it on for 2 more movies.
Yeah,
so.
and into the series. Bert Gummer is Tremors. He's the main character now. But he has some great dialogue, how he constantly says, "I wasn't properly briefed for this situation." When he shoots the Shrieker with the anti-tank round, it goes through the graboid, through a couple of walls, and then hits their truck. And he says, "How was I supposed to know that?" And he says that a couple of times throughout the movie. Do you have any thoughts on the new characters?
They're okay.
Grady is okay. Like I said, he's similar to Kevin Bacon's character. I like the love interest for Earl. Kate.
Yes, I do like her.
Played by an actress named Helen Shaver. And there's that great reveal of that character. Earlier in the film, Bert has a Playboy centerfold on his wall. He says centerfold July 1976 or whatever. An amazing coincidence. The female love interest turns out to be that centerfold. In this movie, it's fun enough that it can pull that off.
Well, that's the great thing about these movies, is they never take themselves seriously. Too seriously.
Yeah, there's always a lot of humor.
Okay, guys, we're a movie about giant fucking worms, alright?
Like the first one, this one ends with a group of characters banding together to survive against the monsters, which is great. The special effects for the Shriekers, like you said, the practical effects, the puppets are great. They move very naturally, but there is some CGI that was early at the time. Anytime the Shriekers are running, or there's a scene where they're climbing on top of each other to make a ladder,
Yeah.
CGI there is not so good.
Worthy of noting for people that haven't seen this movie, this almost 20-year-old movie.
Catch up, you are behind.
Don't let the talk of the CGI bother you too much.
It's pretty small part. Yeah.
Most of it's practical effects.
Really, this is so much better than a 6 years later direct-to-video sequel had any right to be.
Oh my god, we forgot to mention the rock, paper, scissors.
Oh yeah, that's in all of these films. That's how Earl and Val decide anything.
In the second one, though, for some reason the kid doesn't know how to play play rock, paper, scissors
Yeah, the
or
new
something.
kid doesn't know.
And he fucks with him all the time. He's like, rock rips through paper.
Right, yes!
And then that's how he... and he said, rock rips through paper. And the guy's like, no, paper covers rock.
Yeah, Bert says paper covers rock. Huge explosion at the end. Tremors 2 Aftershocks. Is it as good as the first one? No, it's not as good as the first one.
I mean, I'll admit that, but it is my favorite.
It really keeps everything that worked about the first one. Pretty good, I gotta say.
In Perfection, Nevada,
Go, go!
there's a whole lot of shaking going on. This time, they've mutated into the perfect killing machine. Now, only one team can stop these beasts. Michael Gross returns as Bert Gummer, obsessed survivalist.
And people call me paranoid.
Face the ultimate challenge. Tremors 3, Back to Perfection.
Doesn't end there because we wouldn't have much of a podcast if it did.
Right?
By 2001, these movies got showed a lot on cable. Tremors was well ingrained as a cable favorite by this point. And I remember when Tremors 3 premiered on the Sci-Fi Channel, I don't know if it was a big deal for anybody else. Pretty sure it probably wasn't. But for you, me, and our other friends, we have other friends.
Honestly, guys, we do.
For our circle of friends, it was a pretty big deal. Tremors 3 Back to Perfection, which is a piffy title. The story literally returns back to Perfection, Nevada. They're also saying, hey guys, we're back, and it's perfect.
But it is.
3 is probably my least favorite of the series. When I say that, I don't mean it's bad. I mean, it's just the one that I enjoy the least. As the subtitle promises, the third one returns to Nevada. The movie opens with Bert in South America, where there's been a shrieker infestation. And the government has given him a truck-mounted machine gun, massacres a whole army of shriekers with that. So he returns to Perfection, Nevada, and Perfection has become a tourist trap. A new batch hatches, or else there wouldn't be a movie. So what's different is the government shows up and says, you can't kill them, they're an endangered species. It's not as if nobody else knows about the monsters. Graboids are public knowledge, recognized species, and there's a third evolution of the graboid in this. Species continues to evolve. The story develops in some pretty natural direction. Bert becoming this world-famous monster hunter makes a lot of sense. The government's involvement makes a lot of sense. Perfection becoming a tourist trap is really clever. The Chang store is still there, and now his niece turned that store into Graboid Central. There's a billboard out front with a graboid on it, and all this merchandise. And this is one of my favorite things about the movie, all the merchandise. Rack of comic books, the Dark Horse comic logo in the middle, and one comic says Graboids, and the next comic says Shriekers, and the next comic says Graboids versus Shriekers. And those comics aren't real, but I wish they were. They're toys and piñatas, and my favorite is a Graboid hand puppet. These are all,
awesome.
They're all things they're selling in the shop, and I would buy that shit. Now, something I also like about Part 3 is it has a lot of callbacks to the earlier films. The Tremors series has a really solid continuity. The linking between all the films is very strong, and all throughout the second film, Grady and Earl, we start a theme park, Graboid Land. And in the third film, we find out they indeed did just that. Rhonda, Kevin Bacon's love interest from the first movie, went on to write a best-selling series of books about the Graboids. Nestor, who we didn't mention, but Nestor was a character in the first movie, and his old trailer shows up, and it's actually a plot point.
Okay.
And all those callbacks make these movies a lot of fun for long-term fans. Did we mention the kid who gets his picture taken with the billboard and says to his mom, hey mom, get a picture of me with the Tremor? And everybody's like, no, they're not called Tremors. Any nerd would relate to that anytime somebody calls it Frankenstein instead of Frankenstein's monster. We've had moments like that.
I let that go. But Frankenstein's monster is not called Frankenstein ever.
Or when they call John McClane Die Hard. Or when they call the shark in Jaws, Jaws. Anyway, as we mentioned earlier, Bert's now the main character of the series. He's always been a fan favorite. Him becoming the de facto hero was inevitable. Miguel, the Mexican guy from the first movie, is back. The hippie new age mom, Nancy, is back. And even the kids, Melvin and Mindy, are both back. When I saw the movie, I assumed they were different actors. But nope, same actors.
Really?
They brought back the actors from the first movie.
To be fair, I'm sure they weren't.
It's not like they were in demand. And there are some new additions I already mentioned. Susie Chang, Walter Chang's previously unmentioned niece. I really like her. She's this businesswoman who's always looking to expand her brand, which just makes you think about people on Twitter are always talking about their brand. Man, she'd love Twitter.
Right? She would love Twitter.
There's a new hero character called Jack. He runs a fake Graboid tour. A real Graboid shows up during his fake Graboid tour. That's one of the best moments in the movie. The second film set a precedent. Each new Tremors movie has to have a new version of the monster in it. And what's the new monster in Back to Perfection?
The Ass Blasters.
The Ass Blasters. Now, is that name terrible or great?
Yes.
It makes perfect sense. What does the Ass Blaster do?
It flies by 40.
Tail, it has a natural explosive, shakes its butt, there's an explosion that shoots it into the air, and it has wings that allows it to glide. Design-wise, I think the creature looks pretty good. It looks a lot like the Shrieker, but it's more avian, has a more streamlined, longer body. body. When it's a puppet, it looks pretty good. There is more CGI in this film than I think any of the previous ones.
Yeah.
And it's noticeable. It's not always hot. Obviously, the creators of the series, they've all been involved with these movies. And you can tell that they're fascinated by the graboid biology, because they always think of a reason why they go through these changes. The graboids turned into shriekers, which spread out. They turn into ass blasters. The ass blasters take the eggs and fly them to a new area. That's what they do. They make up reasons why this has happened. Even though it doesn't make any sense, actually, they find a reason why. The ass blaster name. It's hard to take anything seriously that's called an ass blaster, man.
Well, what else would they call it?
I don't know. Flying shrieker. Worm bird. One of the TV show episodes, they say ass blaster sounds like a porno, and it does.
They can't call it a flyoid.
Obviously, you could tell the budget was a lot lower, not just because of the conspicuous CGI, of which there is some. The government agents are the seemingly important characters, and most of them end up getting killed off screen. A lot of the scenes take place indoors in this one. The plot in this one is derivative of the original film. An ass blaster gets into Bert's secret compound, and he ends up exploding it in an attempt to kill it. He's always at a disadvantage. The monsters keep evolving so that Bert is always unprepared. That's very similar to what they did in the first and the second. I feel like a formula is setting it.
Yeah.
This one was basically a pilot for the TV show that would follow, and it does end up feeling quite a bit like a TV movie.
Definitely.
There's still plenty to enjoy. There's a scene where Bert gets eaten by a graboid but survives because he's that badass.
Damn right.
He gets in a barrel, and the graboid swallows him in the barrel, gets it to run into a wall, and the other guy cuts him out of it. This one introduces El Blanco, who would kind of become the mascot for the Tremors series, the albino, sterile graboid that can't reproduce. And this is how they keep perfection a protected area.
Right.
Even though this one is not as good as the first two, I still think it's enjoyable for what it is. Will people who aren't fans of the Tremors series enjoy it? I don't know.
It's not horrible. It still has its moments.
Unexplained noises, unusual disturbances, and unnatural sounds will finally surface.
They're coming!
Now, to battle the worst of the worst, this small town will recruit the best. Tremors 4, the legend begins.
We stand our ground and fight to the death.
There was yet another film. 4 of these things. 4 Man, Part 4, which came in 2004, was a prequel. Prequels are not usually well regarded.
Okay.
Is that fair to say? Prequels are a good idea in concept, but it just end up telling us things we already know.
Yeah, and I really dislike this movie.
Yeah, Tremors 4 is your least favorite. I really think this one is good. It even has a really lame subtitle. The Legend Begins. That's very generic. It's not just a prequel. It's a way back prequel. It takes place in 1889, when perfection was still called rejection, and it was a small mining community. The miners dig up some graboids and they start killing people. This causes the owner of the mine, Bert Gummer, Bert's great-grandfather, to show up and say, what the heck's going on? Soon the residents are fighting off the monsters. Now, it makes sense. It is established in the second film that the graboids are millions of years old. I think they say they're the oldest species on the planet. So it makes sense that they would be out there and somebody would encounter them before 1990.
Okay.
But this one is basically Western. Cowboys versus graboids.
The problems that I have with this movie, the story's real weak to me.
Somewhat derivative of the first film.
The new bounty hunter guy.
Black Hand Kelly, Billy Drago's character?
Yeah.
You're not a fan of Billy Drago?
I am not a fan of Billy Drago.
Esteemed thespian Billy Drago.
I am not a fan of esteemed thespian Billy Drago.
Making a Tremors movie that is a Western makes a lot of sense, because the series has always been set in the West. Making it a literal Western, I think, is clever.
I hate that stupid story arc. The Gummer guy is this cowardly guy, and then he's got to go and find his courage. That is so hacky and been done a million times. Hate it when people do that.
You're right. It is hacky that Bert's ancestor would be the complete opposite of him. But I think the movie makes it work, because Michael Gross is good. He's having fun doing it. And I especially like how throughout the film, this Gummer is adverse to firearms. Up until the very end of the film, when he's introduced to a Gatling gun, the earliest machine gun, and he loves that. That is cute and charming.
Well, that is.
He does have the story arc where he's a jerk. He tells the little Chinese kid, because the Changs have apparently been in perfection since the 1880s. He tells
Which is racist.
I think that's fine. But he says to the youngest Chang, he says, bring me my bags and I'll let you eat the last of my cake. And while the kid's away, he eats the cake. And the kid's like, what the hell? And Mr. Gummer says, if people have an opportunity to take advantage of you, they will. He starts out as a dick. He gets over it by the end of the film. And yeah, that is trite, but I really think Michael Gross makes it work. He is good in the part.
I just don't care for him.
But I like the cast. I like the new Changs. And there's a Mexican guy, Juan, who may or may not be Miguel's grandfather. And fun exchange where he says, this will be our Alamo. Gummer says, we lost at the Alamo. And Juan says, speak for yourself, gringo. Is this stuff silly? Sure. But I think it's all all right. There's only graboids in this one. And the change of scenery allows for a different type of movie. Instead of coming up through the floorboards, they're in a train station and the graboid is pulling the planks out with its tongues. How they have to defeat the graboids at the end. There's a lot of creativity there, which is something the series has always excelled at. They bury a saw in the ground and they hammer on it, and the graboid rushes to the saw and ends up impaling itself. Do you remember the punt gun, the giant gun he buys? And that's a real thing. It's a real gun. It's like a 6-foot-long barrel. They kill one with a steam engine, but not in the way you're expecting. But even then, this film can't resist the temptation to introduce a new monster, so there are baby graboids in this one. You see what the graboids look like as soon as they hatch. They're jumping up and grabbing people and pulling them under. If you don't like this one, I think this one is pretty good. The change of time period adds a little more fun and creativity.
It's all what they call a reality show, all about survival. A lot of city folk running around half-naked, bitching and moaning and bad-mouthing each other.
Bunch of crybabies. Here in Perfection, Nevada, home to the 20-ton Precambrian predator known as the graboid. We're too busy trying to stay alive than to spend our time whining about it. You want to learn how to survive? Come visit my reality.
Tremors the series, only on Sci-Fi.
Now, do you remember the TV show, Tremors the series?
Oh, we're not going to go through all the episodes, are we?
I actually didn't get a chance to watch all of them. I only watched 5 episodes. Do you remember the series at all?
Yeah, but it's not important. Nobody liked the series. That's why it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it was short-lived. It only lasted 13 episodes. On paper, it's a decent idea.
They would have went for it and had a new evolution every week.
I don't think they could have done that. And that's something you can feel the show struggling with. How do we pull this off every week on a budget? The special effects in Tremors the series are a lot of shaky CGI, and then lots of things happening just off screen. Frequently they'll say, there's a graboid, and you'll hear the sound, because sound effects are much, much cheaper
than visual effects.
A handful of episodes I watched, 2 of them are really good, and the other 3 were bad. They bring in Miguel's niece, Rosalina, who is eye candy. In her first episode, she's wearing cut-off jean shorts. She's pretty good looking. The character is not that compelling. Christopher Lloyd had a reoccurring part in this.
That does not speak to quality of this, because he also had a reoccurring role on that Pamela Anderson show.
Oh God, Stacked.
Is that what that was called?
That was the one set in the library, yeah. Why do I remember that? Oh my God.
Why do I remember that?
If they had more money, a Tremor series really could have been fun. Part of the appeal has always been this town. And one of the fun things about the series is how they learn to live with El Blanco, the last surviving graboid. At least once an episode, everybody has to stop, and everything shakes because El Blanco's tunneling under words. Tremors the series really isn't that good. It could have been better.
Broke into the wrong goddamn rec room, didn't you, you bastard?
So they're making a new one. For some reason, they said, hey, let's make a new one. Tremors 5, Bloodline. This is what we know about Tremors 5. Bert's back. He's the only returning cast member. It's being directed by a guy named Don Michael Paul, whose name is 3 first names. He's directed Half Past Dead, Who's Your Caddy, Lake Placid, The Final Chapter. So that's not promising. It co-stars Jamie Kennedy. It was filmed in South Africa. It will supposedly feature a new form of graboid, and it's coming to DVD in October. That's what we know about Tremors 5. Based on that information, I'm keeping my expectations low.
I have the other 4 movies, so I'm going to have to.
I will buy it too. Yeah, I'm probably going to go out and buy the TV show too, just for completeness sake. I have suspicion it's going to be terrible. But
well, of course it is. Jamie Kennedy's in it.
Jamie Kennedy's a pretty big step down from Kevin Bacon. At the same time, it's got Bert, and it still has the same writers, the same people who've been writing these movies from the beginning. It gives me hope that it will defy my expectations. They're actually making a Tremors 5, instead of trying to remake it or reboot it or something lame like that. I don't know if Part 5 is going to be good or not, but I hope it will be.
Me too.
Oh, and also there was apparently going to be a video game for the original Xbox. It didn't get made. It got canceled. What would a Tremors video game have been like?
I wouldn't want to play it unless you could play it as the graboid.
But at the same time, doing like a first-person shooter, but with Tremors, that could be fun, because you'd be playing as Bert, of course.
Well, of course. And then he'd just be doing voiceovers.
That could have been fun, I think. I would have played it. Wow, that's under an hour, man.
Really?
First off, I just want to thank all the listeners again. Lee and Lloyd and everybody. Wit has posted some stuff on my blog, Monkeyschmo, or Monkey Schmo.
I'd say it's Monkey Smo.
He posted a comment to our previous episode asking me what program I use to edit it, but for some reason the comment's not showing up on YouTube. I don't know why that is. If you're listening, Monkey Schmo, or Mokismo, I edit everything in Audacity, and yeah, there's a lot of editing, and I know sometimes it's evident, sometimes it's overly evident. I could be accused of over-editing, and I don't know what to tell you because it's not going to go away. I'm going to keep doing it that way. I would hope our fans and our listeners are just used to the show sounding like that.
I think there's a a tad bit of over editing sometimes.
Sometimes I cut people off or I lose things. Sorry, it happens. There are gonna be mistakes, man. It feels good to do a focused episode again. We haven't done one since last year.
I guess. I would count the Phantom Award.
They're sort of focused. Feels good to be doing a series again. A set of films.
Yeah, sure.
Until next time, this is Mr. Bangers, aka Zach.
This is Mr. Mash, aka Awesome, aka JD.
You may email us at bangersinmash88@yahoo.com. That's the word bangers. That's the letter N. That's the word mash. Number 88@yahoo.com. Got a Facebook group. Put the link in the description. Like, follow, etc. if you feel the need to. We always appreciate it. And until next time, well, just be careful where you step.
Felt like there was something under...
Man, we're on the second floor. We don't have to worry about worms.